So there's the notes at the top in green, like highlighted in green.
Mhm.
And then there's fields below that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
Like text fields, input fields, like a form.
Mm.
And the form had not been updated to the new stream key. But I'm still stumped then.
Why
How
did,
were we able to
yeah,
stream 2 weeks ago?
yeah, why did that work? Maybe we
I
found
am really confused about that now,
maybe we found a back door.
right?
I don't know, man. Okay, let's do this.
Well,
Or
we're
do you
live.
not? Are we live?
Yeah, we're live. I'm like, I fixed it and I don't know why or how.
Fun times.
I honestly don't know how I fixed it or like why that worked
Let's
or
just
why it was going wrong in the first place.
let's just talk about technology tonight.
I know it's so
All of
stupid.
all of our, yeah, it's just we put so much faith in it, and one little fuck up, one little wrong character or power outage or whatever, then life is over.
Life is over.
I mean,
Yeah,
I've been
seriously.
I've been reading a lot of articles about the Internet of Things and how security behind that is so not
It's
strong
so
enough.
bad, right?
Yeah, and like we rely on these devices and they can be hacked. You know?
Yeah, like the right people or the people who should are not watching shows like Black Mirror and Mr. Robot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway,
Anyway, well, 23 minutes in.
we're finally live. We did a lot of staring at the screen, being like, why would this be broken?
What are we
We
doing?
finally figured it out. Not really figured it out. Got it working. Don't know how.
Long story, don't ask.
Don't understand it, but we're live.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, what are we going to talk about today, Mark?
Yeah, well, let's just jump right into it because we're running a little late and I gotta leave in a few minutes.
A few minutes.
Yeah, an article that jumped out at me about a week ago from the BBC, and I'm surprised I haven't seen this on the web, social media and newsletters. But then again, I'm doing a really bad job of keeping up with my climate newsletters because I'm busy with other things. But there's a huge leak from uh, from people seen by the BBC that shows how countries are trying to change a crucial scientific report on how to tackle climate change. And that report is the IPCC. Yeah,
The crucial climate report.
the IPCC report that just came out. Yep, yep. And so you have countries in preparation for COP26, which is happening, what, in a few weeks now?
Yeah.
It's end of October now. So yeah, next month. And they're very much suggesting to the UN to play down certain points of that report, saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk about it like this, or maybe we should use this phrase instead of that phrase. Like they're literally trying to change the narrative when it comes to the need to move away from fossil fuels. And when I read that, I was like, why? Like, this is another example of them doing some shady shit in public in front of all of us. And yet no one is saying a fucking thing.
Yeah, it's
you
shameless,
know?
dude.
And so I'm like, where, all these climate activists, environmentalists, they're doing great work, don't get me wrong. But like, when I read this thing, this is some heavy shit. Like, these are governments from countries, Saudi Arabia, Japan, Australia, and other countries too, and even some from Scandinavia that are really trying to control the narrative so that they don't look bad, so that they can, well, I should say this, so that they look good enough, but behind the scenes they're doing what they're doing. They want to keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah. So you sent me an article. I haven't read it yet. Um, does it say specifically what changes they wanted to make?
Yeah, so the article, and I don't know how we can get get the
I
article?
put it in the
Oh,
chat if that's
okay.
helpful.
Yeah. So the article talks about the whole issue first, and then it goes into fossil fuels, meat consumption, and nuclear energy. And the thing that stands out for me the most are the first two. And
So wait, you're saying those things are,
those are the areas that these governments are trying to change within this report and in preparation for COP26. So these are the three main areas.
so like
Yeah.
specifically the parts of the report where it says what like things might be affected by climate change, or
Yeah.
things that we expect to
Things that we need to
have
really
to like
change and
buckle down on.
Yeah, exactly. So
Gotcha.
obviously moving away from fossil fuels. So I'll just read you a few things that I have highlighted here. So the leak reveals countries pushing back on UN recommendations for action. It comes just days before they'll be asked at the summit to make significant commitments to slow down climate change and keep global warming to 1.5 degrees. The leaked documents consist of more than 32,000 submissions made by governments, companies, and other interested parties to the team of scientists compiling a UN report designed to bring together the best scientific evidence on how to tackle climate change.
Wait, did you say 32,000 submissions on things to change?
Yep, from the report. And this is all coming from governments, companies, and other interested parties. So who knows how many of these, but yeah. And I'm assuming
no,
they submitted more than one.
I mean, what I've been hearing about the IPCC is it's the way that I understand it is independent scientists all over do whatever it is that they do. They publish papers on whatever like narrow, because everything is siloed in our world, like narrowly scoped aspect of climate that they worked on. And then the IPCC's point is to bring it all together into one report and have that all be vetted by all the different scientists so that like it's cohesive, like synthesized and like all put together correctly. Like we understand and approve that this accurately reflects the state of the world, you know, because like no one climate expert can really hold it all in their heads. So that's probably like the first pass, is it gets through all of the scientists and they have to give it a thumbs up at a certain point.
Yep.
And then I don't know the order, but at another point it goes through 135 or something countries, and they have to give it a thumbs up and say like, yes, this is what we're comfortable with signing off on. And you know that each of those countries have interests in fossil fuels, or you know whatever they have policies and things that they're willing to sign off on or not. And depending on the order, which I don't know for sure, it seems like there is the opportunity for the science to sign off on it and say this is all good, and then the politicians say actually I want to say this and remove that and stuff like that. So like one of the examples that I saw floating around on Twitter was that one of the reviewers on the scientist side said that when they saw the report for review, it talked about fossil fuels as being one of the causes or one of the things that we needed to cut back on, obviously. But when the review, or when the IPCC report went out to the public, there, like if you searched for the phrase fossil fuels, it like doesn't show up, or it shows up in like the footnotes every once in a while, like but not in the report. Like somebody at some point in the line had the words fossil fuels removed from the IPCC report.
And so this is what this article talks about. That was so just using your example, that was governments stepping in and saying, oh, we don't like this, this, and this. Let's change it to this, this, and this. And then that got passed through. So that's what this report is talking about.
Exactly. Which
is crazy. And then so here's something else. So from the IPCC side in the same article, where is it? It says that, damn it, I just had it up.
Share your screen and show us.
Where is it? Oh, here it is. The IPCC says comments from governments are central to its scientific review process and that its authors have no obligation to incorporate them into the reports. Sure. No obligation to incorporate them into their reports. Our processes are designed to guard against lobbying from all quarters, IPCC told the BBC. The review process is and always has been absolutely fundamental to the IPCC's work and is a major source of the strength and credibility of our reports.
Of course they'll say that.
Yeah, right?
They have to be, like, that's the only thing they have is credibility.
Yeah. But, you know, I will not be surprised, and I'm sure if someone did some more reporting, and maybe people have already done this, but, you know, who, like, behind the scenes, what's going on? Like, who's in their bed?
Exactly.
Or what bed are they in? Who's
or whatever it is. Like, you know, these climate scientists, their career rides on not necessarily how accurate their science is. Sometimes it rides on how willing they are to say yes to a, you know, politician.
Right.
Just put it that way.
Yep. So I don't know. I with this, and then as you probably heard, another event that happened the last week or so was the young climate activist over at TED Countdown in Scotland. This young woman, her name is something McDonald. I have it pulled up. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers have already seen this on social, but a young activist who was on stage with the Shell CEO basically, you know, hacked the panel and revealed a very passionate and direct message to the CEO, directly looking at him and calling him out, and then walked off stage along with a number of her other people, meeting her on the floor of the auditorium with signs about no future in fossil fuels and things like that. So this is coming from TED.
Yeah, TED Countdown, which is a specific, you know, series of TED Talks or an event or something that's specifically about climate.
Right. Yeah. And so not to get too much into it, because again, I'm sure a lot of people have already seen it, but
I don't think they've seen it. I think we should show it. You said there was a video?
There is.
I would love to see it.
Okay, let's do it. There's a longer video of the whole event, but it's from someone's Instagram account and the audio sucks, but I found a YouTube clip with most of it. So let me go ahead and do that. Share audio. All right, here we go.
No matter what he says today, remember, Shell has spent millions covering up the warnings from climate scientists, bribing politicians, and even paying soldiers to kill Nigerian activists fighting against them. All whilst rebranding to make it look as though they care and that they have the intention of changing. Disproportionately, in the global south, so many people are already dying due to issues related to the climate crisis, such as pollution, extreme heat, and weather-related disasters. This is not an abstract issue, and you are directly responsible for those deaths.
Lauren, do you
seriously, I'm just getting to my question now. So my question is, on the back of that, it's a yes or no question. In my view, you're sitting here and you're giving us this greenwashing, and I feel if you're able to do that, I should be able to provide the context of the absolute atrocities that Shell has committed over its lifetime. So if you're going to sit here and say you care about climate action, why are you currently appealing the recent court ruling that Shell must decrease its emissions by 45% by 2030? I seriously do not understand what goes on in your mind to sit there and say, I'm trying to do better, when you're appealing against being legally binded to climate action. So, yeah, my question is a yes or no question. Will you repeal this? If you care, will you repeal this?
Repeal the appeal, you mean? Or
Yeah.
But again, you gave some context, which, by the way,
I'm going to take that as a no. So I'm just going to say, I hope that you know that we will never forget what you have done and what Shell has done. I hope you know that as the climate crisis gets more and more deadly, you will be to blame, and I will not be sharing this podium with you anymore.
Lauren.
So when I was told about this by somebody, I haven't read all the details, but apparently they invited her to be part of the panel, and the TED organizers required that she submit her questions to them, and they pre-vetted it. And, you know, this impassioned speech that she gave was not on that version of things. You know, she obviously prepared a different speech script to give live in front of the audience, which is pretty badass. And I also read that she's working with a activist group, and she had a group of people come onto the stage with a sign and said something like "March with us," and then they marched off the stage and through the audience or something like that. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty badass. But like, why does my hat look crooked? I don't know. I'm messing with this thing. Yeah, TED is one of those media, I don't know, companies, platforms, sources where it's a credibility thing. You know, I've gone there, especially even the TED Countdown stuff, where you're like, oh, cool, all in one place. I can watch talks given by reputable people and learn some info that's, you know, not going to be spin or like greenwashing. Like I expect through their reputation, through their brand, that the information shared in TED Countdown is reputable, credible, and trustworthy. And they did this whole thing that was climate focused and climate positive. And so that too, in doing all of that, is building a brand that, you know, these are the people that I can go to trust about climate information. If I want to hear what people have to say from TED, TED Countdown is going to be that for me. And then they invite as a keynote speaker the CEO of Shell Oil.
So I'm going to respond with a quote from an article that is speaking about this particular event. So, quote, TED Countdown was created intentionally as a space for climate activists, academics, media, business leaders, politicians, and others to hold difficult and candid conversations and to catalyze the solutions necessary to build a zero carbon world, a world that is safer, cleaner, and fair for everyone, says Lindsay Levin, co-founder of Countdown and CEO of Leaders Quest, said in a statement emailed in response to Earthers Questions, which is, I guess, the blog trying to get more answers. We believe in systems change. We believe every organization, company, city, and nation and citizens has a vital role to play. Given Shell is in the top 10 highest emitting companies, we can't ignore the impact of a company like that. This conversation does not represent an endorsement of Shell or their climate actions. There is debate at the heart of the climate movement as to how we achieve these goals, and our intention is to create space for that.
I mean,
such a
is there debate in the climate movement about whether or not we need to get off of fossil fuels?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, there is no debate about that. There can be no debate about that. The science is very clear. We cannot keep burning super concentrated carbon if we want to, you know, survive in the next 20 years.
This is a very like politician-esque response or answer, right? I mean, it's like, you know, this is probably not going to make any sense, and I'm trying to put this thought together. But like, it's like you're debating with a killer on, well, they only used a knife and not a gun, you know, like they're still doing the thing, you know, and then, you know, people can say, well, they are doing something, right? Well, we all know, you know, with their bullshit clean energy ads and their commitment to XYZ, right? It's like, well, if you look at the grand scheme of things, the amount of money that they say in these ads should impress people. Oh wow, they're putting X billions of dollars into that new green technology.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ask
but
how much of a percentage that is of their
exactly,
total operating expenses.
exactly. And so, you know, you have a person like this woman who is the co-founder of Countdown, trying to have a diverse set of conversations and things. Like, we don't have fucking time for conversations like this. We know what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like,
So,
there's plenty of debate in the climate movement about how to move forward. She's not lying there at all.
sure.
But none of that debate includes continuing to burn fossil fuels,
Right.
or giving the CEO of Shell or any of the companies that have been instrumental in greenwashing, in lying doubt, climate denial, like lying about it, you know, giving them a platform like that is not up for debate. What we should be platforming and debating is, you know, what our future world looks like, you know, how we deal with things like, I don't know, mining for lithium in a democratic and eco-friendly way. And like, there's a lot of stuff that I am totally in support of debating, and it has nothing to do with Shell oil.
But also, funny enough, we're not even having those conversations.
Exactly.
So
that's what's so frustrating.
It's like, hey, y'all, the ball's over here. Why are you still looking over there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, move away from the oil executives. They do not have anything worthwhile to say.
Yeah.
It's like platforming a Nazi or a white supremacist or whatever. They're not going to say anything useful. They're only going to try to seed doubt and greenwash whatever they say and lie to your face. That's what they do. There is no point in having those people on your stage to have a debate when there is so much other stuff. If you want to talk about how we move forward, there's so many other people who have really amazing ideas that, like you just said, are not being talked about at all. And we absolutely need to be talking about them.
You know, if the amount of coverage that is being put on this debate that we're apparently still having can be shifted to those approaches and solutions that are actually doing the work, you know, the really amazing stuff that you see in Project Drawdown and other resources, right? Like, then that will get more attention to those approaches and solutions, more support, more funding, more employees. You know, if we're talking about building new industries, people create industries, people make up industries. But how can we do that if the attention is over there and no one is shedding the spotlight on what's possible and what is already existing, and that we just need more people support all the stuff to make those things happen?
100%.
But because and this is all climate distraction, you know, this new phrase I've been talking about, like, this is still putting attention on old news when the attention should be focused on, and this is just not within the climate space, this should be in every conversation. You know, like, I want to go to a middle school fair next year and see that there's an air miner booth for people that are working in carbon removal. I want to go and see all these really cool programs being started for kelp farming. You know, where are the workshops and the classes transitioning farmers to become kelp farmers? Like, if they're happening at a very small level. Like, we need systemic change when it comes to shifting away from this stuff, but we also need the attention. We also need the awareness. I mean, that this is actually a thing. You know, again, more people, more journalists who have good intentions on reporting the news, don't get me wrong, but if they can just focus their energy on what's actually happening and what could happen, then we can leave this conversation and move that spotlight onto something else.
Yeah, and we've talked before about anxiety and outrage fatigue and the nihilism and helplessness that our current climate communication situation leaves us all in, and that the solution is to talk about the solutions.
Right.
like you're saying.
Right.
Everyone's exhausted, everyone's tired of this debate that like clearly doesn't matter. And we need to be talking about, it says Countdown is a global initiative to champion and accelerate solutions to the climate crisis, turning ideas into action. Like that's their headline. Why
Yeah,
are we talking about
right.
this? Why do we invite Shell Oil? It's just bizarre. Like clearly Shell is paying them to do this. That's
Yeah.
my only
So, mhm.
conclusion.
So all of this made me start to ask the question, who do we trust? Who can we trust with all this? And trust already, at least in the US, but from what I'm gathering from listening and watching the news, trust is an issue in a lot of countries. There's a lot of movements and organizations and groups of people that are purposely trying to create misinformation and disinformation to erode trust in certain authorities or in organizations, and most of them are those that they don't agree with. And so we're already having trust issues.
We have
Right?
enormous trust issues. It's
And so
insanity.
outside of climate, and so now with organizations like TED and COP and whatever, the UN and other governing bodies that play this role of being the go-to. But if they're doing shit like this, then how is that trust going to keep how is that trust going to build and grow?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just afraid, fast forwarding a few years, when these young people are starting to take more leadership positions, like how are they going to be entering the world, right? Are they gonna have much more of hesitation trusting these organizations? Are they going to create something else that surpasses these organizations so that trust is baked into the DNA of whatever it is that they're doing? I hope so. Who knows? Maybe TED will become irrelevant in 10 years because of doing shit like this, and maybe other
Yep.
organizations will be created by people that actually value trust, and younger people who want to embed that in the foundation. Because I just feel as if they can't trust anyone, then who can they trust?
Well, there's two words that come to mind with what we're talking about here, and trust, was just said a whole bunch of times, like if it was on my bingo card. I got bingo or whatever, but like the other one like intertwined with trust, and from a company point of view, is integrity.
Sure.
So as a company, are
Yeah.
you acting with integrity? As a influencer, as a leader, are you acting with integrity? And I guess what we could probably look at as the silver lining of the last 30 years or something, or I don't know, is the younger generation has grown up with so much spin, greenwashing, whitewashing, whatever, that they are extremely I guess good at sniffing out when people are
Yep.
acting with integrity.
Yep.
They're extremely good at picking up on authenticity and inauthenticity.
Mm-hmm.
So we've learned as a generation, as a society, to at least get better at understanding credibility and authenticity and
Yeah.
integrity and all those things. We are less trustful and as a result, I guess, less gullible.
Mm-hmm.
And more difficult to sell to and more difficult to bullshit. So I see that as a silver lining, because we're not trying to bullshit anybody. The side that's trying to bullshit people are the side that's destroying the planet.
Right. I know. And within all that, there's transparency becoming more and more of a thing, becoming more of a common thing that people are wanting to see in companies. And so it's like the more the walls around companies become transparent, the more shit we're all going to see, and they're going to be called out on it super fast. And when you see that young people, more and more of them are wanting to work with companies that have a mission-centered focus, that are doing good for the planet, those companies who have those skeletons in their closet, the companies that are doing wrong, are going to be called out, and they're not going to be able to find people to work in those companies. And what do? You know, do they sweeten the pot and, you know, offer more money and benefits to future employees, or do they become, you know, do they dissolve and go bankrupt?
I mean, it's an economy question too. Like if we are good at building an economy where 100% of people have, you know, their survival needs met and are able to earn a decent living and,
yeah,
you know, get out of that desperate state of having to work because they need to, you know, pay their mother's insulin bills or something. Like there's this desperation that capitalism feeds on right now that will make it possible for a company that somebody doesn't really want to work for to continue to exist and hire people by just, you know, sweetening the pot or offering them whatever. They require people to be desperate so that they don't have to pay them as much. And what we're working for is for people to not have to be desperate so that those kinds of companies won't exist anymore.
So that those jobs that actually are meaningful, that are contributing to the greater good, exist, and more of them exist in the future. This is why, again, we need to build those new industries and support those that are actually doing the work, because if those companies succeed in those industries, they're going to need to grow. Like Google isn't still just the two co-founders in their garage. Like they grew because they needed to grow based on their business model. And so imagine all the, you know, all these industries and companies in this newer economy, you know, one for good, you know, one that's addressing the planet, they're going to need people. And so if we can provide those opportunities so that people, if they're given two opportunities, right, the desperate opportunity or the positive opportunity, the one that contributes and has meaning, which one are they going to pick?
Right.
And I would love to see those companies be able to counter those offers from more extractive companies, because, you know, unfortunately they have the money and they're able to do that. But I would love to see a time where those companies are bringing in the same cash flow and they're able to offer those that same amount of money so that that person decides on the better option.
Yep. So the short answer to who could you trust is, I think you really need to know. I don't think you need to be an expert on climate science. Nobody's an expert on climate science, not even the climate scientists.
Right.
But I do think you need to understand the basics. Like we live in a world where everything's made out of carbon. Every living thing will emit carbon when it decomposes or burns. The amount of carbon that is released into the atmosphere needs to match the amount of carbon that is sucked back in by the plant life and animal life or whatever on the planet. That's pretty much the basics. Anything else either knocks the system out of balance by emitting too much carbon or is lying. Like that's the simple meat of it. And like if you understand the basics to a level where you kind of, you know, distill them down to something that even an 8-year-old would understand, it makes you immune to this greenwashing and all this crap that's going on. It makes it easier for you to stand up there and say, you know, what are you doing to help us transform to a world that works for everybody? You know, and if they can't answer that, then they are working for the short-term interest of whatever company they're representing, and they just want to grow their bottom line and not actually solve problems and do valuable things that need doing.
And I would hope that that easier part that you're talking about eventually goes away, this is a non-issue.
Yeah, of
you
course.
know, so, you know, we are still in that transition mode. Again, that spotlight's over there. We need to transition it to be over here. And it's just, we don't have time. I mean, all this, I feel like I say this a lot on these calls, but like, at the end of the day, we just don't have time to fuck around like this.
Yeah. I think,
You know?
like getting acquainted with the basics also helps you realize how very much out of time we are.
Yeah, and how much work we need to do.
Yeah. In the New York Times has a newsletter called Climate Forward, which is one of the few that I actually read. And in this week's, it had a really nice summary of like where we are going into COP26. And it talked about how I think in 2014, the climate models related to the current scenario had us set for, I think, 4 degrees of warming. And now we're looking at more than 3-ish. It said current policies now put the world on track for a bit less than 3, assuming that those policies actually get implemented, which, there's no guarantee. And some of the most ambitious promises by countries to zero out their emissions could keep us at around 2. We also know that even 2 degrees of warming is too risky. So that kind of like understanding the numbers, you don't like it actually kind of helps to understand what these numbers mean. Like we're talking about a whole entire global average, and that's very different than just your weather being 4 degrees warmer. So you have to kind of understand that. That might take a little bit. But just understanding that 2 is a threshold where, shit's kind of hitting the fan. We really don't want to go any higher than that. 1.5 is actually still pretty bad, but is a lot better of a threshold than 2. And there's a vast difference between 1.5 and 2. So understanding those basics, I think, is really important. And that makes you a little bit more immune to the greenwashing and stuff like that. And then understanding where we are now. So I believe the official number we're at now is probably somewhere around 1.2. So we're already above 1 degree of global warming. The most ideal target to be reaching for is to take that 1 degree and go back down to no warming, go back down to the stable temperature, average global temperature that we've been at for the last 10,000 years that has enabled humans to invent agriculture and cities and everything that we, claim to hold dear.
Yeah.
So like just having a really solid understanding of those facts and those basics, at least for me, helps me when I read things and look at stuff. I'm like, wait, this is a distraction, or this is greenwashing. And then the other thing that really helps is a lot of times you'll see things framed in terms of numbers, like, oh, they're spending $3 billion on this algae focused fuel or whatever. But then when you, like we said, like you realize that their actual total operating budget is something like 3,000 billion or something, then you realize that that's like pocket change for them.
Yeah. I mean, just follow the money.
Yeah.
That way, just follow the money.
Yeah. Don't listen when people tell you like, oh my God, that's 74 tons of carbon dioxide emissions a year. And like they make it sound really big. And then you realize that the world emits 40 something gigatons of carbon dioxide a year. So like that's what?
It's
billion tons? I don't remember. Oh my God.
It's cherry picking facts
Yeah.
to sound like they're doing something or sound like there is progress being made. And it's like, oh, they're doing that? Okay, great. We can like take a breather.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they got that? Cool. We don't have to worry about that then. No, dude. Like that is what they want you to do,
They're very good at framing and
totally. They're framing
spinning.
They're framing and spinning it just enough to keep their image intact, while again allowing people to think that things are under control.
Yeah. So do you have to go? I know it's the top of the hour.
I have a few minutes.
Because I wanted to just quickly veer backwards to that first thing you said about the IPCC and, trying to get them to not mention fossil fuels or not recommend cutting back on fossil fuels or something.
Right.
It's just really funny to me because it's like that kind of thing is not changing the science. This kind of thing has been done since the very beginning of climate reporting and climate reports by scientists ever came out. There was one of the very first, it was kind of a meeting. It was a gala, actually. They put together a gala, and they invited all of the oil executives because it was supposed to be the unveiling of a report that describes what the scientists are recommending world leaders do. And it was, I can't remember the date exactly. It might have been like the first George Bush presidency term. So around that time, I think is right. Bush or Reagan, I don't remember. But at this gala, the report said fossil fuels are very detrimental and all that stuff. That's what it's always said. But then when the person who was the spokesperson unveiled the recommendations and like gave the summary verbally into press, he said something like, yeah, climate is bad, but we have so much time before we're ever going to notice the warming that I'm sure technology will be invented by then that will save us. So, no further action, just like wait and see. And like it was a spin. It was probably, the article that I read thinks that this person was told by the president or somebody really high up to keep the fossil fuel interests intact or whatever. But they don't have any record of anything like that. Maybe some documents will be leaked or something, but it's been done since the very beginning of this stuff, that the science will say something. And if you look at it and you look at the facts, you're like, geez, we really should stop burning fossil fuels. But the spin is always, we're running out of excuses at this point, but
yeah,
20, 40, 50 years ago, they were able to say like, look at how much technology is advancing. We'll figure something out.
Right. And, taking some plays out of the playbook of big tobacco, doing very similar tactics. Yeah, but even just that, like, oh, well, we have plenty of time and technology will figure it out. I mean, that again, right there puts nature as a, well, as a for us, we'll still extract from it. We'll still do what we're doing. Nature, oh, it's fine. It'll always be there. Now, I mean, how different would it be if the person responded like, oh, wow, we're really, messing up our planet with this. We should stop doing this and clean up the planet, right? Like, because we lost that sense of connection. We don't even understand how to view this planet that we live on and that we live with as something that we should be taking care of. We'll just keep doing it. Technology, this thing that we will invent, will take care of it, as opposed to, oh, we're causing this. Oh, we should stop what we're doing and actually address this thing. You see what I'm saying? Like, there's that disconnect, and that's something that we've talked about a lot in the past. Like, man, the moment we saw nature as a thing for us, and this is a longer conversation, but the moment we saw it that way, we just shot ourselves in the foot. That was it. We walked away from thousands of years of living in harmony with nature and this was just recent, a couple hundred years ago, a blink of an eye in terms of the existence of our human species.
Yeah, go back to the period of time known as the Enlightenment, which seems really ironic, which is when, kind of the scientific method was being invented and all of that stuff. Right. But it was definitely where the mind over matter attitude came out, and this whole science thing over nature, viewing man versus nature
as machines. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I think about too is, if you were to put the human species on a timeline, and when a few hundred years ago, with the stuff going on that we're talking about, when that started to happen, it's just like a blink of an eye. And one would think that it's not as if it's a very deep-rooted habit compared to our whole existence. So I why is it so hard to break that habit? I mean, I know why. That's a
Yeah.
but like but I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it's not as if we've been doing this for 10,000 years and then we're realizing, oh, we fucked it up. It's we've only been doing this for so little compared to the grand scheme of things, but yet we're so ingrained in it. When we if we look at our history, we know that we could survive, if we were to just untangle everything and revert back to how we used to live. And it just seems like a no-brainer that we're not thinking about it that way either.
I'm not advocating for reverting back to the way that we used to live.
No. I'm not saying caves and all that stuff. No. I'm saying in terms of how we approached our natural world, how we took care of it, how we kept it in balance, how we worked with it, how we viewed it as part of us as opposed to for us.
Yeah. Well, it's also, it's spiritual and colonial.
Mhm.
The colonial, I don't know, project was very much tied to the religious project of
Mhm.
overcoming any culture that had a relationship with nature.
Right.
They beat out all of the pagans in
Mhm.
Europe, and then they went to the Americas, and all of the indigenous cultures also had very, not like pagan-ish, but there were similar elements where
Mhm.
where their religious, deep-rooted spiritual, cultural beliefs were based in how they dealt with their environment and how they worked with nature, and it preached a respect for nature and a reciprocity with nature, and that was just stomped on and obliterated from every single culture by the colonial Western European enlightened view of things. And they thought they were superior. They still think that their culture is superior, and it seems to be the one culture in the entire history of humanity, I don't know if that's true or not, but it seems like it, that is actually the worst for people and for long-term survivability.
Yeah.
The only people that have any guaranteed long-term survivability are the very few at the top, and that few at the top is dwindling quickly.
Yeah. I just hope we have enough time to course correct the ship. But
yeah, so I have a thought that I tweeted today that I might like leave us with, if you want. It's a deep thought by Sarah.
Go for it.
So I said, maybe the difference between the left and the right is simply this: the left wants the world to work for 100% of people and is willing to disrupt everything to make that happen. The right wants to maintain order and is willing for a minority of people to be miserable for that to happen. That's why the right is terrified of diversity and inclusion, which they equate to white genocide, because they think white people being a minority will mean they'll be the ones miserable and oppressed.
Oh, totally.
The left wants to make being a minority irrelevant with well-being for all. The truth is, in this current system, the proportion of people miserable and oppressed will continue growing and growing until eventually nobody gets off free of being miserable and struggling to survive, no matter how white, morally superior, rich, or powerful you are. Deep thoughts by Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I wake up sometimes and I'm just like really, do we even have a shot? Like this is such a complicated, interconnected clusterfuck of issues and challenges all coming together at once, surfacing all together at once. And the thing is that it's not climate that is, climate is just the symptom. I think it really it does come down to a lost sense of identity and purpose and morals and values.
Yeah, it's all those lost cultures that were stomped out.
Yeah, and all of this is just the result of that loss.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, if we all come around in one big circle holding hands and singing Kumbaya, like, sure, that will help with the root cause of it, but that's not going to help the stuff that has happened because of that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things that need to happen and fall in place all at once, and it is no small feat. And when you have third parties like governments and companies with their own interests in mind, blocking, denying, distracting progress that they know needs to happen, or that they know that people want to happen, only because they want to, again, put more in their bottom line, squeeze out profit as much as possible. Just, if they weren't in the picture, I'm wondering where we would be right now.
Yeah. That's why for me, I just, when I get overwhelmed and frustrated and all that with how complicated everything is, I just, back to the basics. Right now we're at 1.2 degrees of global warming and the shit is hitting the fan. So 1.3 is going to be even worse, 1.4 even worse, 1.5, that many degrees worse. Like every 10th of a degree is a huge, huge change because it's global, it's an average, blah, blah, blah. And then, that's at what, 420 ppm of CO2 or something? 400, yeah, I think 420 is about where we're at right now.
And talk about a messaging opportunity. Like, let's move away from the 1.234 stuff, because people think that, oh, well, it's just a point difference, point X, right? Oh, it won't be like, no, dude, this is, so that's another, maybe we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, we can talk about so much of this. Like, I want to talk more about, what's being left out of the IPCC. There's more to uncover with that, because it is a summary, because it is a synthesis that governments have signed off on. Is that really the document to trust? Is it what we actually think it is? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, there's a lot more to say. But to me, it's just like, educate yourself about the basics. When you get confused or, you want to prepare for a debate or whatever it is, center yourself back in those basics of the planet that we live on. And, if you need to look into even the spiritual traditions, I've been kind of playing with astrology basically lately. That's a tradition that was rooted on like, where are we in the universe, and, how to navigate our way around that. It was not necessarily a personality system to begin with. It was how people told themselves where they were in the year before they could read and write,
how to make sense of things. Yeah.
So root yourself in the basics of where we are in place and time, and that we're on a planet with an atmosphere and a greenhouse effect and plants that use carbon and produce oxygen. And it's just like, it's very, very, very simple, very basic.
And how crazy the series of events had to have happened in the right order at the right time for any of this to even be this. Like, fucking mind-blowing. And like, so like, what
for fossil fuels even to be in existence, it like the amount of time and energy that it takes to create a fossil fuel, the price of oil should actually be something like $400 a ton. I think a gallon, I think I read.
Yep.
Like, we're burning this stuff that takes millions of years to create.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to see it as this super concentrated, very useful energy stuff, like the sun's energy, it turns out, is actually very difficult to capture and store in a concentrated form. And it takes tons and tons of pressure, geological pressure, weight, heat, time, like the amount of work that is required to create a gallon of that stuff, like that shit should be more valuable than gold. And like, maybe we use it every once in a while to, like, Buckminster Fuller said that it should be like the spark that starts our engine, but then everything else we do should be just however much comes in, and not like, don't burn up our like battery. It's basically the car battery that's sitting there to like get the engine started, but don't run your entire car off the battery forever, like, it doesn't make any sense because you can't replace it.
Right.
It's gone. Like, what are the oil companies going to do when it's all gone?
Exactly. But
They
what
don't care.
how
They
you
don't
just
think long term.
how you described it and what you described is yet another example of us not recognizing the all the things that made this thing a thing in nature, on our planet, on our home. And so we just treat it like, like garbage, like it's just like, oh, well, we'll get it next time, like that's the thing. We don't have that connection to our natural systems. And so I'm wondering if, taking everything that you just said now, and if we change the perspective of how we view nature, if we would, maybe it's not so much get rid of fossil fuels, but hey, let's actually like value this stuff in a way where it's not seen as a commodity. It's not seen as this infinite resource, which is obviously not, but that's how they want you to think it is.
Well, yeah. And doesn't that tell you how very little the price of things is related to the actual value of it?
Well, yeah. I mean, look at all these other, look at all these other products. And,
The fact that a tree is worth money if it's cut down,
yeah.
and it's not worth money if it's living in the ground. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me. Anyway.
We humans need to do a lot of work internally. We talk about this outward revolution. Judah Krishnamurti says this a lot. We talk about this outward revolution. We want change, but yet we're so afraid of looking into ourselves and changing within because we're afraid of what we'll find. And so at the same time as us pushing for all these changes and things like that, moving from here to there and all that, but we also have to take the time to look within ourselves too, and understand how we as a species and our way of thinking and our view in the world got us into this mess to begin with.
Yeah, I think just understanding that maybe the way that we're living right now is not the end all be all, the 100% peak of humanity, the culture to replicate throughout the world and for everyone else to adopt. Like maybe it's not. It's just one of many, and it actually kind of sucks.
Yeah, we have to admit that, and I think that's a very hard thing for a lot of people, especially those in positions of power, to actually admit.
Yeah.
And walk away from, because it's comfortable and it provides a certain lifestyle for them, and unfortunately not other people, and they don't care that it doesn't for them. And anyway, again, another topic for next time.
Hopefully this is a little cathartic. I don't know.
Yeah. And hopefully our tech issues won't become a thing next time.
Yeah, so I think I fixed it for good, but I don't really know why it worked last time then.
So for those who are watching after the fact and maybe jumped on right at 5 Pacific and did not see us, we hope that our tech issues are no longer and that we will start promptly next time.
That's right. Thank you for watching or listening. This has been Mark and Sarah from Climate Designers. And yes, we go live on Twitch, theoretically, when it lets us.
Exactly. When it's nice.
So if you want to watch us live on Twitch next time, be sure to go over to twitch.tv/climate designers and click that follow button. You'll get a notification when we actually do figure out how to go live. And you can come in and ask us questions in the chat while we're live and be part of the show.
Till next time.
Bye.